I put it in the direction of
Type. You ready, Khalid?
Yeah. Exactly. So really big. So. You said it's a week now? Yes. Maybe 2 more weeks. So I'll try. You want to get his mom?
Photo.
Initials AK from Missouri, USA.
Photo Abdul Khabi.
Oh, your question. I got it. Sorry.
So my question is, after Salah, we it's an obligatory thing, and we ask for some forgiveness after that obligatory act. Is it also recommended that we do acts that are voluntary? Do we also, seek forgiveness afterwards? Like we give charity or other prayers or things that's not obligatory, other obligatory acts of worship?
Type. So basically, with regards to doing sadaqah, good deeds after prayer too, you're saying?
No, after we make salat,
After you make salat, Tayyib, you have recommended that, okay?
So after acts that are voluntary acts that are not obligatory, do we do certain things as well? I mean, do we do the same things like acts of forgiveness and acts of stuff?
Clear, Tayyib. The question is, we know that it's from the sunnah to seek Allah's forgiveness after we make the mandatory prayers.
No.
So is it also recommended to seek Allah's forgiveness after other acts, whether they're obligatory or recommended? The answer is yes and no. Obviously, Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells us to seek His forgiveness after we make Hajj in Surah Al-Baqarah. And that's not prayer. So that proves the general principle, the yes part of the answer, is that after any righteous action, always seek Allah's forgiveness because you fall short. There's always shortcoming of the slave. And there are 2 things that the slave has wrong with him. In the Arabic language, say there's al-qusuru wa taqsiru. Al-qusur is your natural shortcoming. You try your best, but it's just not good enough. And a taqsir is when you actually don't what? Push yourself enough. There's a difference. I tried my best, and this is my best, which isn't perfect. I could have done better, but I didn't fight and push myself to do the best. And the slave, the human being, is always going to have both when it comes to Allah's ibadah, or at least let's say one of the 2, roughly. Let's say that. Most people want to have both. We're flawed, and our effort is also what? Flawed. Everyone understand this? So the general rule is that you seek Allah's forgiveness. As Allah mentioned, it's not just specific to prayers. And the no part of the answer is that it's not something that is necessarily a part of the ibadah like it's specifically mentioned for the salah. Astaghfirullah, 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 Allahumma anta salam, subhan. That's specifically mentioned for what? For the prayer. After you make Hajj, you ask Allah to forgive you. Ramadan, Allah forgive us. And you also ask Allah to accept it from you. And istighfar is ibadah. Okay, asking Allah to accept it from you, that's ibadah. So that's a reward and that's a fruit of the righteous deed that you just did. Clear, inshallah? No. And Allah's best, excuse me.
This was AK from St. Louis, Missouri. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti. I didn't fast last Ramadan for health purposes. Now I have to pay fidya. Can I give it to a zakat website online?
Question AK from Kansas City, Missouri?
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, Missouri. Is it permissible for me to pay my zakat or my fidya for my missed days of fasting because of a medical condition to a zakat organization? Specify what the intention is. Specify and tell them what the intention is. Is that this is for fidya and it should be given to or for the purpose of fidya. And the reason why is because there is a difference. The recipients of zakat are more specific than other general recipients. Giving money is not like the same as food. It'am. Everyone understand this? This is $500 to be given for zakat. Anyone who falls under those 8 what? Recipients. This is money that I'm giving for sadaqah. Sadaqah can be given to someone who doesn't fall under those 8 recipients. This is money for a gift, like when you slaughter an animal. Eid Adha, you can give meat to someone who's rich and poor, or someone who's wealthy. That's not the same as giving it to someone who is what? Poor and needy. And also there are times in which those ulama say that it has to be food or food stuff and not monetary what? Assets. So you have to make sure that any type of organization that you're giving your money to, that they are strong and trustworthy. إِنَّ خَيْرَ مَنِ اسْتَأْجَرْتَ الْقَوِيُّ الْأَمِينُ. They said to Moses, his daughter said to him, the best man for you to hire is he who is strong and he was what? Al-Amin, and not Al-Amin. He was really trustworthy. Not Big Al. Everyone understand this? So the ulama of Islam, they say the two conditions for someone to do something properly is that he's strong and trustworthy. Strength meaning capable. Trustworthy meaning he's not going to cheat you. So you have someone, a brother who's a good brother, but he just doesn't know his foot from his elbow. It's reality. And you have some brothers that are immensely strong, but they don't have the integrity to fill a cup of glass. They don't have enough integrity to fill this what? This crystal. So you have to have someone who has the integrity and the what? And that's the covenant you want to see. Someone that's going to take your money, and not someone that's, oh, it's all for the face of Allah. It doesn't matter, brother. Just give the money. No. This is specific wealth, specific food, specific recipient, etc. Everyone understand this? And the best thing to do, and Allah knows best, is that if you can feed the people yourself, that's the best thing to do. Invite a poor person over your house every day. Invite a student of knowledge over your house every day. See, there are Muslims that are poor that need the money more than New York City. We can agree on this. When's the last time you actually bent over and sweated a little bit and picked it up and picked up the sharp knife and put it on the animal's throat? When's the last time you knocked on a brother's door and did what? This is from me and my family. They aren't the same. And Allah knows best.
Initials MR from London, UK. Can I wipe over my headscarf when having to do wudu at work, etc.? And do I have to wipe my ears directly, or can I do so from outside?
We did that. That was last week.
Okay. Initials NH from Ontario, Canada. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Shaykh. Is it permissible to do voluntary fast only on the weekends? I work during the weekdays.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question comes from the UK. Is it permissible to do voluntary fast only on the weekends? There's nothing wrong with doing voluntary fast only on the weekends, as long as that weekend doesn't fall under something which is prohibited. As far as the hadith that it's haram to fast on Saturday, then that hadith is not sahih. It's not authentic. The Prophet did not say that. So it's nothing wrong with fasting on Saturday. And there's nothing wrong with fasting on Sunday, back to back. It's not a prohibited day. It's not as long as it's not the day of the Eid. All right? As long as it doesn't fall under an authentic prohibition, there's nothing wrong with doubling up on the weekends. And Allah knows best.
Are there any hadiths in the Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim collection on hijama? Do you know anybody who does hijama?
Question is, are there any authentic hadiths in Bukhari Muslim about hijama? And do you know anyone who does hijama? Hijama is well-known sunnah. It's a well-known medicinal practice. A well-known medicinal practice in the Sahihain and outside of the Sahihain, and the authentic hadiths, whether in Bukhari and Muslim or outside of Bukhari and Muslim. Hijama is well-known. All right. As far as is hijama a sunnah or just medicinal, that's a different discussion. Do I know anyone who does the hijama? I'm sure you can find many brothers who do it. I believe Brother Mukhtar does the hijama. Inshallah, he will guide you. Next question.
Salam AS from Ontario, from Toronto, Canada. Is it acceptable for a man to go to a female doctor, chiropractor, etc.? I reverted to Islam in 2016 and can't stand having a man touch my private part.
Tayyib. The initials are?
Initials are AS.
AS from Ontario?
From Toronto, Canada.
From Toronto, Canada. Is it permissible for a Muslim of the Qawi to go to a female doctor, a female chiropractor? I'm a revert to Islam, and I cannot stand a man touching my private area. Tayyib. At the end of the day, the ulama of Islam, they say, is that a man is not allowed to have anyone look at his or her awrah unless that person is your spouse or from that which your right hands possess, for men. All right, understand? A woman does not have concubinage or those types of relations with her right hand possessions, but a man can. In Al-Islam, 2018 America, I don't know, okay? But in the deen, Allah's deen is what? Clearly mentioned, all right? And Allah's deen doesn't bend over backwards or jump through a loophole for anyone. Allah says, إِلَّا عَلَى أَزْوَاجِهِمْ أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ غَيْرُ مَلُومِينَ. So if it's your wife or your right hand possession, then that's one thing for them to look at your awrah or to have direct contact with your what? Awrah. Everyone understand this? A woman, no one is allowed to look at her awrah except for her husband or young children. Things like this. Everyone understand this? So that's the general rule, doctor or not. So if that's the case of looking at the awrah and coming in contact with the awrah, then it's the only time it's permissible for that rule to be broken if it's a necessity. If it's what? Man or woman. A doctor is not allowed to look at your awrah if he's a man or a what? Woman. He's not allowed to touch your genital or genitalia or your private area. Man or woman. Unless it is what? Medical necessity. Medical what? Necessity. So there's no difference here between a man touching your genitals and a woman touching your genitals, doctors. It's haram unless it's a medical what? Necessity. Everyone understand this or not? Now, let's be mindful of some things now. One says that since it's a necessity and the rule is that it's haram, it doesn't matter whether it's a male or a female because it's originally what? Haram. Everyone understand this or not? If a person is dying, right? He's dying and he needs to drink something that's haram. Doesn't matter if it's wine or beer because it's necessity. So one may say it doesn't matter whether it's a male or what because it's haram unless it is durura. And here's durura. So one may take this view and one may say in 2018 and in light of the LGBT community and the towering scourge, it says, I don't want no man touching my private part. And if it was a necessity and if it had to be done, I would rather have the opposite sex doing it. One may say that. One may what? He may say that. And can we say that thinking is necessarily haram? Because it's all necessity. So if someone has to touch it or see it, then why not it be a what? Woman. One may look at it like that. However, if there's a intention of lust and the sheer fact, I don't want a man looking at it or touching it because a woman, so on and forth, then that's a different story. Then that's a what? Different story. So you have to think about it. Is there a lustful intention behind it? Is the doctor a homosexual? Do you know the doctor's sexual orientation? Does he seem like a feminine man, etc.? Do you even have that option? You everyone understand this? So yeah, my view is that it has to be detailed on this answer. It has to be detailed on this answer. But one thing that we can agree on is that the doctor looking at your private part, touching your private part, is based off of necessity. So if a woman touches it, it's haram if it wasn't necessity. And if a man touches it, it was haram if it wasn't necessity. Everyone understand this? At the end of the day, if you're a revert to Islam and you know yourself, and it's going to cause you a great deal of mental disturbance, you're going to be disturbed and it's going to mess you up. A man, you have to do that which you know is a necessity for you. Everyone understand this? That which you what? You know is a what? Necessity for you. And in 2018, somebody may have that way of thinking. I don't want no doctor looking at my private part because people are widespread to be what? Homosexuals. Well, women homosexuals as well? Yes, they are. But it isn't what? The same. Everyone understand this? And Allah is the one who knows what's best.
Initials AM from Seattle, Washington. Are we allowed to delay our salah due to work? For example, can we delay the Dhuhr?
Khalas, if we had to stop, we stop.
Initials AM from Seattle, Washington. Are we allowed to delay our salah due to work? For example, can we delay the Dhuhr prayer for a period of time in which Asr comes in and then pray the Dhuhr prayer followed by the Asr prayer?
Question comes from Seattle with regards to delaying prayer because of work. Can I delay Dhuhr until Asr comes in and then make them together? We say no. You have to make the prayer when it's time to make the prayer. If Salat al-Dhuhr comes in at 12:30 and it goes out at, let's say 3:30, roughly, you have to make Dhuhr within that time period. Whether it's 12:35, 12:45, 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:20. It has to be done before 3:30. I delayed the salah because my break is at 1:30. I'm traveling, I have to go to the doctors, I have to do this, so I have to manage the time. I don't do it all of the time. I make dhuhr as soon as I can, but in this situation, labas. But missing the prayer and then making it later, no. Unless it is your explicit intention of combining dhuhr and asr and intentionally missing dhuhr and making it with asr based off of a need or a necessity in light of what we have previously explained of the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, that the Prophet ﷺ made those prayers in Medina. He wasn't traveling, there was no fear, there was no rain, there was no sickness. When he was asked, he says, Arada an la yuhrija ummatahu. He didn't want to make a hardship upon his ummah. And some of the ulama, and they are a small minority, who hold the view it is permissible to combine prayers even if you are not traveling, if there's a need or a necessity, if it's done occasionally. If it's done what? Occasionally, not every single day. And going to work 5 days out of the week is not occasionally. Everyone understand this? You're going to be stuck in traffic. You know you're going to get held up here. And you're not traveling. You don't want to miss the prayer, etc. Some of the ulama, they hold that view based off of that hadith, off of that dalil. And Allah knows best. This will be our last question, inshallah.
Initials SN from Toronto, Canada. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Before seeking knowledge, should one finish the memorization of the Quran before learning other things, or should they be balanced?
It depends on the person. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question regarding seeking knowledge. Should you memorize the Quran first and then move on to other sciences, or should you be balanced? It depends on the person. It depends on the time and the place. If you're a revert Muslim and you're going to a community of non-Muslim people, memorizing the Quran does not take precedence over learning the fundamentals of Tawheed, over learning Dawah, over learning this, over learning that. It doesn't. If you come from a place in which there are many scholars and imams and students of knowledge, and the knowledge is everywhere, focus on yourself and pinpoint that, inshallah. La bas. But you may come from a place in which a great deal of fiqh is needed. Then there's no doubt fiqh takes precedence over being hafiz of Quran. No question about that. Okay. Hadith. You may be in a time in which there are many widespread weak hadiths and things like this. So it depends on the person, it depends on the time, it depends on the place. It depends how young you are. And understand this, of a man who's in his 20s, he goes to Medina, he has to prioritize. He's going back to America to be an imam of a community in which there are needs and necessities. You understand this? It's easier to bring in someone to recite the Quran for Ramadan than it is to have an imam and a khatib, a marriage counselor. And even in the month of Ramadan, it is not obligatory to recite the entire Quran, as the people do and stick to. That's not mandatory. It's not what? It's not mandatory. The imam who recites what he knows or what's easy for him to recite is better with fiqh than the imam who knows the whole Quran and has no fiqh of the deen. And it's not scorning the memorization of the Quran. خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ. The best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. But we're talking about prioritizing. We're talking about what? Prioritizing. So it depends on how old you are. Like people when they study fiqh, they go overseas and say study a madhab, learn a madhab. That's good for a 10-year-old boy in school who's going to learn the basic book, then the intermediate level book, then this book, then he's going to graduate high school, then he's going to go to the college, then he's going to go to the master's. That's different. You're a grown man that comes from an inner city, urban city in America. You have to study comparative fiqh. You don't have the time to study the ABCs and then regurgitate them and learn it again. You don't have time for that. You need to start off from the beginning, the correct view with the proof. So it depends on the person, it depends on the time. We find the athar, the salaf al-salih, they wouldn't seek hadith until they learned this, until they learned the Quran, until they learned the rules of inheritance, etc. These things, some of them are applicable today, and others what? Are not. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Wa sallallahu sallam wa barak ala abdihi wa rasulihi nabina wa imamina Muhammad.